Good Thursday evening, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandages here with your Atlantic Tropical Update. And today, September the 1st, 2022, we've gone 60 days without a named storm, and today we've got one. Danielle formed as the newest tropical storm, the fourth of 2022 in the Atlantic Basin. We'll be talking, of course, about that storm, where it's going, how strong it gets, plus two other waves, and we're going to dip into the Eastern Pacific that has some more activity on it that may actually be impacting some land in the longer term. So, record quiet August, right? We went through the entire month, most of July without any named storm, but it's the first time we've gone through the entirety of the month of August without a named storm in the Atlantic Basin since 1997, so 25 years it's been. When else has this happened in, say, the last 50 years? Well, there are 2 years. 1997, that's the last time it happened, and then 1961 as well. In fact, over the last 50 years. So what were those two seasons like? Well, in 1997, the season overall ended with 8 named storms. Before August, there were 4 named storms. After, another 4. But check out 1961. It ended with 12 named storms, just one named storm before August, 11 after. In fact, there were 7, I believe, just in the month of September, which makes sense because September is the most active month within that 6-month hurricane season. So here's where we stand by the numbers. 4. That's our named storm so far. 4. Danielle we're up to. Alex, Bonnie, Colin, and now we've got Danielle. 35% of all named storms develop in the month of September. We're about 9 days out from the peak of the season on September the 10th, and there are 89 days left in the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season. What will the second half hold? Are we going to turn hyperactive or remain very quiet and falling well below expectations like we've already seen? Here's a look at tropical cyclone formation by month. So we just came out of August. Typically about a fifth of all named storms occur during that time since 1851. And then you got September. 35%, over a third of all named storms occur in September. Why is that? Well, that's when all the conditions, all the ingredients are there for the recipe to develop a tropical system in the Atlantic Basin. We've got a moist atmosphere, relatively low wind shear this time of year, of course dependent on certain things, and very warm sea surface temperatures and plenty of seeds coming off the coast of Africa, tropical waves that then move into a fertile environment and blossom and grow. All right, let's talk about Danielle now. Here's the stats on it. It's got 60-mile-an-hour winds, so already the strongest storm this season. 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It's heading on off to the east, crawling. That's going to be critical in the days to come here, and it's strengthening forecast. Its pressure, 1,005, not all that terribly deep, but it does look pretty impressive on infrared satellite imagery here. You can certainly see the spin, the blow-up of convection around that center, and it's very, very far to the north as well, which is interesting. I'll show you why in just a second. Visible satellite imagery, a 12-hour loop here before we lose the light of day and we go dark. Of course, that's what happens when you have visible satellite imagery. But you can see that certain spin there and even a clearing out of a center for a little bit of a time there. And as the sun set, kind of casting the shadow on the billowing convection around that center as it continues to fire, even though the sun has come and gone. Here's a look at water vapor imagery. Plenty of dry air around, but not extremely dry air. Not like what we've seen off to the south. Certainly dry air in the mid-levels, but I don't think it's enough to really impact the system as it continues to strengthen over the next several days. So where is it going? Well, not really anywhere, anytime fast. Okay, look at this. It's going to be sitting over the same area straight through the upcoming weekend, and forecast to become our first hurricane of 2022, and a pretty decently strengthened one at that. A Category 2 hurricane, as is the forecast right now. Now, intensity forecasts are one of the toughest things to look out in the future and forecast, but right now they've got it up to a 100-mile-per-hour Category 2. So with sea surface temperatures this far north in the Atlantic, they are plenty suitable for tropical development in 80 degrees or warmer, and the threshold here is everything shaded in red, or anything shaded at all, is 80 degrees or warmer. So where it's currently located, it's got plenty of warm water, and with that forecast of it only moving to the east at 2 miles per hour and meandering in the same general area, it'll be taking advantage of that warm water. Now, I will say this, that will only happen for a certain amount of time. It's kind of self-limiting because when a storm sits over the same area, something called upwelling occurs. It's mixing up the ocean, right, with those winds. And eventually it'll mix up the ocean enough that it upwells cooler waters from the depths and cuts itself off from the warm energy source of the warm ocean waters. So we'll see what happens there, how big of an impact that has on its intensity over the coming days. Both models show it developing here right into the day on Saturday. Notice it doesn't move very much through the weekend. It's not until Labor Day it begins to drift its way off to the north and east, and then eventually the wind field expands as it gains even more latitude, and it heads off towards Europe and maybe even the Arctic Circle as it travels to the north and becomes extratropical in the next week, week and a half. All right, now let's talk about Invest 91L. This is a separate wave well to the south in an area we typically look for tropical development this time of the year, the main development region. This has a moderate chance of development in 2 days, 50-50 shot. Higher chances, 70% within the next 5. Looking at it on infrared satellite imagery, there's not a whole lot of organization here. Certainly some strong convection. We can see that from the yellow shades and black shades from the cloud top temperatures there, indicating they're very cold, meaning they're extending up through a very high altitude into the atmosphere. They're stronger thunderstorms. But you don't see anything really wrapping around a center here, nothing really defined. It's also moving pretty slowly, which is good because it can take advantage of the warmer ocean waters and potentially get its act together. Now again, visible satellite loop over the last 12 hours before we lose the daylight. You can see the broad overall structure of this system. You can certainly see that there's a visible spin in the atmosphere, but nothing really getting bundled on up and seeing that energy getting consolidated into a center there just yet. Water vapor imagery paints another picture here of dry air, a lot of it back behind the system to the east, and a little bit of some dry air off to the west. Not that much, though. I don't think it's going to be pulled into the overall circulation. Its spin, its atmospheric vorticity, not seeing it getting bundled up like we'd need to see for it to actually gain some strength and organization, but it does look better than it did, say, 12 hours ago. So, as we have talked about in these videos before, this is going to be a very slow, a very gradual organization if it, in fact, does organize into a named system in the next 5 days or so, which is why chances have been kind of fluctuating. It was up to 80% chance, and it was down to 70, and then it was back up to 80 again, so it's all over the place. But where's it going when, in fact, it does? Well, it's going to follow the general steering pattern that's in the atmosphere right now with a big dome of high pressure, the Azores High, Bermuda High, I'm sure you've heard of that before, sitting over the central Atlantic, steering systems off to the west. That'll control this system's trajectory for a little while, but then it starts to take a northerly component to it and then due north as there's a weakness in that ridge and a trough of low pressure along the east coast. So that should be able to pull it off to the north, and most models here agree with it passing even farther to the southeast of Bermuda and then out to sea off to the north and east. So that would be a good scenario, not impacting any land here, but certainly keep a lookout on the northern Leeward Islands there. GFS ensemble members showing a very similar outcome for what the other computer models were showing. This is the GFS run 30 different times, just swapping some variables here and there to see if we get a different outcome. But notice there are a handful of those ensemble members that continue that track farther to the west, while the other half say, yeah, we're going to take that turn to the north and then northeast away from Bermuda. So this is interesting to see if more members start to lean this way or not. This is not set in stone. We have to watch this evolution. And if it continues to slow down, the steering pattern overall can be different at this point in time and lead it in a different direction. So we'll have to watch that very closely. But for now, the northern Leeward Islands should keep a close eye on this. There are no current watches or tropical alerts out for those islands right now. But going through the next 48 to 72 hours, just keep a lookout. Some higher surf and maybe some of the outer rain bands could start to get in your direction. So what do the models do with things with 91L? Well, not much development here happens until we get to Labor Day. And even at that point in time, the GFS is the only one that's really locking onto that. The Euro drops off, and we've just got a GFS that really begins to strengthen this as it passes well to the east-southeast of Bermuda. You can see Bermuda right there, safe distance away. Lots of heavy surf obviously coming in that direction if this in fact verifies, but then heading into the open Atlantic and away from any land sitting in the open Atlantic for at least a little while. So we've got 4 named storms out there right now. 91L, if it develops, will get that name of Earl, would be the 5th We've got another wave out there, too. This one, they've actually just lowered these chances down to 10% now. If you watched yesterday's video, this had a 50% chance just yesterday. Really has fallen apart. Some dry air and some wind shear has taken its toll on that system, which they actually tagged as Invest 94L. Now I want to jump over to the Eastern Pacific because there's a brand new tropical depression 11 there. But right behind that is another wave, a robust wave that's got an 80% chance of developing. And why I'm showing you this is watch what the models do with this. So here's Tropical Depression 11 heading out and away, and then you've got the next one developing here off to the south. And notice that it does move over land in portions of Mexico by the time we get to the middle of next week. Lots of time between now and then, but something to keep a close eye on. And if that does happen, that would likely send some moisture into the southwestern portions of the United States. So we'll have to watch for U.S. impacts from an Eastern Pacific storm, potentially. We'll see how things play out there. All right, that's the latest on the tropics, both in the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific. Until next time, you can find me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok at TimTalkWeather. We'll see you again tomorrow.